And hi again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Donovan and Dino. I'm Dave DeNatale, along with the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, coming off of another Cleveland Browns victory on Sunday night. I didn't even realize, Jimmy, the Browns, since Sunday Night Football had gone to NBC, I think that's the first time the Browns had won on Sunday night. It's just kind of like another one of these little milestones that keep getting knocked down here in 2020.
Not that we've been on it much.
No, but that's true.
It's not like they've been beating down our door to bring us on. No, I think we lost to the Steelers and the Rams. I think that's been it. And then finally last night, come through with the win. But it was a great night. It was a badly needed night because earlier in the day, a lot of people that were kind of, watching what they're doing to lock up this playoff spot, everybody kind of seemed to hold serve. And they won as they came up with some big victories. And so it was very, very important for the Browns, and in that crazy NFC Eastern division for the Giants too, to come out of there with a win. So the Browns did what they had to do. It's a very business-like win. And I think that's what you do when you're a good team. You go in and you just win the game.
Yeah, I think you had kind of had that as your sort of the Dr. Donovan prescription last week for a win. Hey, look, this isn't a team that the Browns need to be struggling with, down the stretch. We don't need to have a heart-stopping type game. And it really was. It was a workmanlike surgical performance led by the quarterback, Baker Mayfield. And, I mean, just kind of you do what you're supposed to do to a team that you're expected to beat.
Yeah, I mean, they were really hurting coming in. I mean, they had all kinds of things happen. I mean, they had limited practice. They had their offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett, go out with COVID. They had Freddie Kitchens come in and call plays. Daniel Jones, their starting quarterback, had 2 injuries. He couldn't play, so Colt McCoy is in there. Their best cornerback, James Bradbury, he went out because he had close contact. I mean, they were really just trying to piece the whole thing together. That's okay. I mean, those are their problems, and you just don't make excuses, for going in and winning the game. You just go in and win the game, and I thought that's what they did. But you're right, Baker Mayfield led them, and to be honest with you, Dino, he's led them now really the last 4 weeks. Jacksonville, Tennessee, Baltimore. Even though they lost, he was exceptional in the game, and then certainly last night, he's playing at a very different level. And even a higher level than the excitement of that stretch in his rookie year where he had us all excited by the way he was playing, because he's playing with a lot more know-how right now. I mean, he was just winging it, doing his thing, doing his Oklahoma Sooner thing back there in his rookie years, maybe even his Texas Tech thing before that. But now, he's much more of a quarterback. And I think week to week, he has just gotten more comfortable with this offense and with his coaching staff, and 2 guys in particular, his head coach, Kevin Stefanski, who's his play caller, and his offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt. I think they've done a marvelous job with him, and I think that they went inside and did a little patchwork during the bye week, and I think he came out of the tunnel a lot better, and he understands things more. But I'll tell you what, he is playing at a playoff level right now. You have to have your quarterback playing at a very high level if you're going to go into the tournament, and he is playing at that level.
It always has been standing out to me, maybe in the last 3 weeks or so, the number of different receivers early that he's getting the ball to, whether it's getting it to one of the tight ends, throwing it out to Kareem Hunt or to Chubb, depending on who's in the game, and then obviously using all the wide receivers. It's not like we're waiting until the second quarter for Jarvis Landry to get his first catch of the game. I mean, he is spreading it out beautifully and getting everybody in the offense involved.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's on the first drive of the game. I mean, if you go back to the Monday night game against the Ravens and you go back and watch that first drive, which they scored on, I mean, the ball went everywhere. It went to Njoku. It went to Chubb. It went to Landry. It went to Higgins. It went to Kareem Hunt. I mean, I think it went to Harrison Bryant. I mean, that kind of covers it. I mean, that's who they are. And then you throw in Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think the fact that he gets everybody involved so early, and I do believe it's by design, I think that's why you're seeing fewer drops. I mean, last night they didn't have any drops. I mean, it's really kind of a statistic that you don't even talk about anymore because the Browns receivers are playing so well. But like you said, I mean, they're not cold late in the game. They're hot. They're very much into the game throughout the game. And I think that's been very, very important to them. And I love it. Now, the other part of that is who's missing? And it's OBJ. You know, Odell Beckham Jr. is not in there. And whereas they used to dedicate a lot of time and a lot of throws to him to get him involved in the game very early and very actively, you know, that presence isn't there. So you can draw your own conclusion from that. But right now they are playing at a very, very high level in the passing game with their offense.
How many times in the past have we seen an injury at a key position? In this case, right guard, let's say, you know, where Wyatt Teller goes down and then you have a backup and the backup gets hurt and it becomes a real weakness and a real noticeable problem for the Browns. And, you know, not that many teams in the NFL have guys that can keep plugging in, but what Bill Callahan did to get, I think, this offensive line in shape, and obviously the work that Andrew Berry did in the draft and free agency, but to have a guy like Nick Harris come in last night on the third play of the game and play a position that really isn't familiar to him and play it well. I mean, that really stood out to me. I'm like, that's something we would not have seen a guy who's second or third on the depth chart be plugged in and play at a high level. It's a different time.
Yeah, it really is. If you go back to the summer, there was a day-to-day possibility that was getting close to become a reality that Nick Harris was going to be the starting center on opening day against the Baltimore Ravens. J.C. Tretter had a procedure done on his knee, kind of a cleanup as they call it. He wasn't out on the field. We didn't know when he was going to come out on the field. We didn't know if he was going to be ready for the opening game of the season. So Nick Harris was in there. And we kept wondering, why aren't they going out and getting a center, you know, and signing a free agent center to bring them in here? After all, this kid is a kid, this Nick Harris. But they loved him then. Very, very smart. He did play a little guard at Washington, but he was primarily and dominated at center, and that's why he was attractive to the Browns when they picked him up in this past draft. You're right about Bill Callahan. He's done an amazing job with everybody on that offensive line. I mean, consider all the work he's had to do. He brings in a new right tackle who definitely has played before and played a lot in the NFL, but, you know, he's now coming to a new team. They have a kind of an unknown at right guard because we didn't know Wyatt Teller was going to be so dominant, but he really pushed him to become a dominant right guard. And when he's been in there, he has fit the bill. I think they knew Tretter and Bitonio were going to be fine, but now you're starting a left tackle who played right tackle in college in Jed Wills, and they've done an amazing job with him. I think he's the top assistant coach in the NFL this year for what he's done with the Browns offensive line. And there are a couple of other guys on the Browns staff that have done a great job too. Chad O'Shea's done a great job with the wide receivers. Stump Mitchell's done a great job, you know, with the Browns running backs. Chris Kiffin has done a great job at the Browns defensive front. Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, Paul DePodesta, they have put together a great staff, but Nick Harris did a great job. Doug Deacon, who I always go to on these type of situations to get the real report card on how an offensive lineman played, he said that what Harris lacks in overall size and height, he makes up for it in speed. He said he's very quick to the point where he doesn't get knocked off his feet because he's on his guy so quickly. And if you zero in on him, if you watch the tape of the game, you'll probably notice that. I mean, he was really quick off the ball. And I think that it's his position now because I think Hubbard is gone for the year. And let me just say, Hubbard gave them a great season. I mean, he was the perfect swing guy on the offensive line. You have to have a guy like that. I mean, he played right tackle. He played guard. He went in at left tackle for a couple of snaps in the Monday night game against Baltimore. So that's a big loss. But this is exciting to see this kid go in and play so well.
And it's you think about it, you're starting to look at these day 2 draft picks that the Browns, got here in 2020. You think about Peoples-Jones, and you think about Harrison Bryant, and you think about Harris, and you sit there and you go, yeah, they really found some diamonds in the rough in terms of second day performers who can come in and play. And, hats off right now to Andrew Berry for what looks like, we'll wait and see. I mean, obviously Wills has done well. Wait and see when we see Grant Delpit next year, but the 2020 draft looks awfully good right now for the Browns.
Yeah, it really does. And, Kevin talked about that last week, that it's great to see those draft choices out there playing, and that he doesn't call them rookies anymore because they're so deep into their first NFL season that they're not that they're veterans, but they've gone through the wars now, enough of them anyway, that you can kind of take that label of rookie off. But boy, that draft class looks really very, very good. It's good when it contributes, and that you're not always saying, well, down the road, he's going to be a guy that's going to play a lot. I mean, the road is right now, and they've needed them at certain times during this season. I mean, they needed Jed Wills to man that left tackle spot. That was essential to that offensive line coming together. They needed, they really did need Delpit, so that was a big hit for them. The next step would be those two guys in the third round. How are they going to come along? Jacob Phillips, the linebacker from LSU, Jordan Elliott, who, if Richardson is going to miss some time, will probably get expanded playing time along the defensive front. Those two guys in the third round. Now, if they really turn up and really start to make plays, and I know they're very high on both of them. Phillips played much more last. Yeah. I think this will be a great draft class. This will be a great draft.
We're joined by Jim Donovan here on Donovan and Dino. I want to stay on the defensive line for a second. Level of concern right now with Myles Garrett and things he said after the game with, bouncing back from COVID. Are you concerned about, his continued be able to fight through this and play hard?
Well, the only thing I'm, on a couple of points on that. Number one is, I think if there's any risk, and if he's not feeling well, they're certainly not going to play him. I mean, right. They understand that. I mean, that's not only just with the Browns, but the entire NFL. He seems to feel, and I think they seem to feel that, day by day, he should be feeling better. And hopefully that's going to be the case. But I do notice it. I mean, there were some incredible tight shots of him as the game waned on last night, right in his face mask. And you could tell that he was really reaching back and looking for some oxygen there. I would think, Dino, let me lay this out to you, if they could get out to a lead on Sunday against the Jets, I think that you might see him get less time out on the field, if any time out on the field, okay, that they could take him out, put Porter Gustin and some other people in there, and they'll address that. They have some other rushers, that could go in there. Claiborne, they have him. They have other people. So that might be one way to do it. And if the playoff spot was wrapped up, okay, and they are where they would be in the playoff field, then maybe the Pittsburgh game, if he is struggling, maybe he doesn't play in that game, so that you give him another week off and then you get him ready for your most important game, which would be your opening game in the playoffs. Those would be a couple of scenarios that might possibly be out there for them that I'm sure they're deliberating, because I think they really cover it all. All their, possibilities are in the drawer for them.
Yeah, it's fun to get. It's funny because it has been noticeable, and Myles hadn't really talked about it until after the game last night. He tweeted about it and then talked about it. I think even today. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Something else. This is really, the Browns haven't clinched the playoffs yet, but they're very, very close. 97% or whatever probability for them getting in. They got to take care of the Jets on Sunday. We'll talk about that in a second. But from your perspective with the fans, obviously you've talked about it. It's difficult this year because the fans, only 12,000 fans have been able to get to the stadium to watch the games, but this is pretty special stuff here, what we're seeing in 2020, that, we've had a little lost generation of Browns fans who haven't been able to experience something like this, a team that is a playoff contender that's really solid on all phases. This is pretty good stuff. This is pretty fun, isn't it, for you?
Oh, it's an incredible ride. It's just been marvelous to watch, because if ever there was a year to pull out kind of a a golf outing term, if ever there was a year that you could get a mulligan, this would have been the year. No, first year head coach, no offseason, a really bizarre training camp, no preseason games. And the first time your team is out on the field, you're on the road in Baltimore taking on a team that a lot of people still think, could be a team that could contend for the AFC title. I mean, all of that, you throw that all into the mix and you say, wow, 6-7 wins would be a really good year. But if they don't hit that mark, well, you got to understand what they've gone through and what they haven't been able to do. So, but taking all that and, putting that off to the side, which is unbelievable that you put it off to the side. This has been an incredible thing to watch. A young coach comes in here after many coaches have come in here. And some coaches that had a lot more experience being a coach than Kevin Stefanski has had. To watch him come in here and Andrew Berry come in here and Paul DePodesta stay here and kind of get reaffirmed as somebody in power and a decision maker, and for these guys to get together and show that being together works. Being together works. It really does. Being on the same page. I'm not fighting to get more power than you, and we're both going to get more power than the other guy. We're just all going to work together. And then that spread to the football team, and to watch it take form and to see them win, I just have to tell you, this is a marvelous through. But I would say this. They have offered a beautiful distraction for what has been a year that has been full of distractions and bad distractions and a lot of bad reality where people's lives have been changed and a lot of lives have been lost. So I think that this has been a different kind of vaccine for all of us in this area, that they have been able to go out and play this kind of football for a town that loves football and has been craving good football. And I really think, Dino, and I don't think this is a one-shot wonder. I think this is just the start of it. I really do. I think they're on the right road. I don't think there's anything that's going to pull them apart. I think they have seen success as a front office, as a coaching staff, and as a team. And I think it's all working. It's extraordinary to watch.
Yeah. And these fans deserve it. And quite honestly, you and Doug Deacon deserve it too. I have enjoyed listening to games so much more to see the Browns do well. Another game with a New York team this weekend is the Browns will play the Jets on Sunday. The fact that the Jets, with nothing to play for other than to maintain the first overall pick in the draft, went out and beat a good Rams team, that kind of woke everybody up a little bit. And Kevin Stefanski's done a good job of keeping this team singularly focused 1 week at a time. But the Jets are no joke. I mean, they're going to be coming in ready to fire on Sunday.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think that, for a lot of the Jets, it's probably a farewell tour, including their coaching staff. But yeah, I mean, you're right. And teams like that are dangerous. I mean, do you remember, Dino, that time when Eric Mangini was coaching the Browns and they had like one win going into the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, and all of a sudden they started knocking people off, and they beat Pittsburgh on a brutally cold Thursday night down at First Energy Stadium and basically knocked the Steelers out of the playoffs that year by beating them that night. And they went on and they knocked off Oakland, they knocked off Jacksonville, and they beat Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium. So you're right. Teams like that can be a problem because they're going to be very loose going into the game. But I really think there's been so much work put into this focus that Kevin Stefanski has implored his team to have, that I don't think that they're going to – I have never seen them so far this year take anybody lightly. Even when the Texans came in with just a couple of wins, even going down to Jacksonville. And, Jacksonville, is right down there now holding the number 1 spot because the Jets ended up winning that game yesterday. So I would, and just the way the Browns are playing, I really think that they're so dialed in on what the goal is. I think that they're oblivious to how many wins the Jets have and how many losses they have. I just think they know they've got 10 and they want to get to 11.
That's it. That's it. My friend, as always, I appreciate your time. Merry Christmas to you and the whole Donovan family at the Donovan Farm, and we'll see you again next week, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Dino. Merry Christmas to you and to everybody.
All right. And thanks, everybody, for watching Donovan and Dino right here on WKYC.com.